Dear beautiful beings, what I now want to talk about is a practical approach to shadow integration, or a general approach how we can get into touch with fragments of our consciousness that are usually in a waking state not accessible to us. For example, many of you might have in dreams revelations of deeper layers of consciousness within yourself, where you found something out or learned something about yourself that was way beyond the grasp of the ego. In a waking state, you wouldn't have had access to it. The reason for it is that in a waking state, the self-concept or the ego that you have developed is actually in rejection to these deeper layers of consciousness. So during waking consciousness, it will usually censor those type of inputs that come from the deeper self. So how do we overcome this type of censorship? Mind you, the ego serves as a protector. It tries to protect you from traumatic experience because it was born out of traumatic experience. So the ego consists of memory from which it develops bias and prejudices that it says, well, this we don't do or there we don't go, because there could be potentially punishment or suffering coming if we express those traits of ourselves. So during waking consciousness, what actually happens, it will suppress any type of impulse coming from those fragments that you are in rejection of. But there are ways of going beyond it. We can, in a sense, use a self-hypnosis technique. Some know it also as a form of shamanic technique, where it is about accessing the deeper layers of yourself, so your deeper self can teach you where you're actually in resistance. So in order to reach a state of self-hypnosis, which is also a way of suspending the ego, again, the ego is also suspended when you're in a dream state. We can do this in waking consciousness. We can learn to dream while being awake in meditation. One of the ways of doing it is you imagine a place, a fictitious place in the mind that, for example, is an ocean, a desert or a mountain, something that has a huge open space. And you will then focus on sensations. That means, for example, if you imagine walking into a desert, you try to feel how it is to walk bare feet in the sand, to feel the sand between the toes, to feel the wind in the face, to smell the air, to feel the sunshine, for example. Or if you should choose to walk into a forest, for example, you could create the sensation in your mind, how it would be to walk barefoot on dry leaves, how they break under your foot, the smell of the earth, the sound of the birds or the wind in the trees. And when you focus on sensations, your body believes to be there, so then you get in a state of self-hypnosis, and it weakens the ego's defense mechanism. If you do this thoroughly as a type of meditation, what highly likely will occur that, let's say, beings, creatures, some types of entities will appear to intrude your fantasy. But they're actually not intruding your fantasy, they are part of your deeper consciousness that has been locked up. So when that happens, it is important to not go into resistance, to not try to control the experience, but instead let it flow. Let it express itself without any limitation. No matter if the content appears to the ego dark or scary or whatever it is, embrace it profoundly and let it run. And then your deeper consciousness will explain to you, often in terms of metaphors, very similar to a psychedelic experience, for example, what your current hang-ups are, where you block your energy, where you're actually in resistance. And it's very important to find those energy blockages, because those energy blockages prohibit you from being in a higher state of energy frequency. So I encourage you to do this exercise, and If you want to, describe what you experienced in the comments under the video, and maybe I can help you a little bit analyzing those imageries that you have experienced. I'm deeply curious about what you will find. I encourage you to deeply do this type of archaeology of mind. It can be very interesting. For those who have an interest in getting in contact with the shadow, you can on purpose create a dark space in the mind. For example, you can go into a deep dark cave that you find scary, or into a cellar or whatever it is, and you do the same procedure. You strongly focus on sensations until you reach a state of self-hypnosis. The ego is suspended, and then whatever happens, do not resist it. Stay with your breathing, stay meditative, do not create a fight or flight response. And then integration of deeper parts of your consciousness that you were originally in rejection of because of trauma now becomes a possibility. Have fun experimenting. Contemplate about that. Be well.